Hi there, this is Sean, the Honest Book Reviewer, with another book review. In this video we're discussing The Last Girl, written by Goldy Moldavsky. It's a young adult horror novel. Now, when I read this very early on in this book, I just thought it was a copy of Scream, the movie Scream. It just seemed like the author based the book on that movie and changed it enough so it wasn't a complete copy. But the first chapter, that's meant to hook you in, that felt like it could have been a scene from the movie Scream. It was ripped off the movie straight away. That's what it felt like to me. And there are certain parts in the book that also felt like that. As I said, it's changed just enough, so it's not a complete copy, but there's enough of it there to make me think the author based a lot of this book on that movie. The first chapter is intended to hook you in. As I said, it's like the movie Scream. It reminded me of Scream straight away. Rachel, our main character, is home alone. She is just, spending time at home, listening to music, trying to do her homework. She looks out the window and sees a hooded figure wearing a white mask, what she thinks is a white mask. Then she starts hearing noises in the house. She's not sure what they are. Could be her mother coming home. When she opens the door and she goes to the stairs, she looks down and she sees a figure in a black hoodie wearing a white mask. Then there's two figures in the room. One runs out of the house, one runs at her, and she runs off trying to escape. And the chapter ends with her being caught by that figure and dragged backwards. That's the hook that gets you into the book. It's quite a good hook. The chapter is written quite well. It's quite intense. A lot of suspense at the very start, and it's quite intense at the end of that chapter, so it does hook you into it, so it's well done. Unfortunately, it reminded me so much of Scream, it felt like a copy from the movie. The book then jumps ahead, and Rachel's at a new school in a new area, and she's trying to get her life back on track. She's trying to take control of her life again, trying to push that traumatic episode behind her. And we don't know the whole thing, what went on. We get that first chapter, we don't know what happened after she's grabbed, but we know it's traumatic enough for her to shift areas, shift schools, and she copes with that trauma by watching horror movies. And that's how she gets addicted to horror movies. She's trying to watch horror movies to condition herself to not be scared again. That was an interesting way for that character to be interested in horror movies, I think. Rachel's struggling to make friends. She makes friends with a girl called Sandra, and Rachel and Sandra hang out a lot. Sandra drags Rachel to different parties, different things, trying to get Rachel out of her own head, trying to get her from stopping at home all the time. They're at a party and people start holding a seance at this party in this abandoned house. At the seance, another character called Thuray starts to recount a ghost story. And it is made up, but he pretends it's about people who used to own the house. Then suddenly different noises start playing in the house and people start screaming and running everywhere. And then one girl called Lux, who's a popular girl at school, she's screaming and pulling out her hair, and Rachel laughs at her. And from then on, we set up Rachel and Lux being enemies. And that seemed a bit cliche. It seemed a bit high school movie to me, that the popular girl and the new girl who's not popular suddenly become enemies. It's happened quite a lot. Rachel starts to think about what happened at that seance, because she thought she saw somebody slip in some kind of recording device into their pocket, and she wonders if that person was behind all the noises going on. Was it a prank that someone played? She starts to delve into that a bit and talking to people, trying to investigate it. And suddenly she's invited to join a club, and the club's called the Mary Shelley Club. She finds out it's a group of teenagers. At the moment, there's 4 in there, and she's the 5th. These teenagers develop pranks every year. They have a chance to do one prank a year, and they get to choose a victim. And what they do is then other people in the group have to be involved in that prank if they're asked to be. They can't question it. So there are different rules in this club they have to follow. At first, Rachel's excited. She thinks the club's the thing she needs, will get her out of her own head, distract her from her own thoughts from the past. So she's all eager to be involved. She thinks it's all fun. As the pranks go on in this book, each member comes up with a prank against somebody and they play out. And of course, other people in the club have to be involved in the prank if asked. At different pranks at different times, Rachel sees somebody wearing a black hoodie and a white mask. And if you remember, that's what her attacker was wearing. And the second person in her house who ran off, they were wearing the same hoodie and white mask. So Rachel is suddenly afraid. Is that second person back in her life? Who's the person wearing the black hoodie and the white mask? Is it somebody trying to finish the job? Is it somebody from her past trying to attack her again? And that builds up the suspense and tension. I thought that was well done in this book. That element was very well done. There wasn't enough of it for my liking. I thought there could have been more. The author could have done a lot more to ramp up that tension by bringing that person in more and more into the novel, but there was enough there to keep it my interest. But I really do wish there was more. When Rachel is first introduced to this club, we get to learn the other members. And unfortunately, the other members are all stereotype characters. They work okay in the book, but I was a bit disappointed that the author chose stereotypes as the characters. So we have Bram. Bram's the popular, good-looking guy who's also a bit of a jerk sometimes. He can also be a bit nice sometimes when he needs to be, but that's a stereotype in these type of books. And also, teen movies and TV shows as well. We have Freddie. Freddie is not that popular. He's also very quiet. So he's a bit of a stereotype as well. The quiet guy who's not very popular, who's kind of cute in a certain way, but, he's not as popular as other people in the school. We have Felicity. And Felicity is the mean girl of the group. And she's written in a very cliche way. So every type of TV drama has a mean character. And Felicity, this time, is the mean girl. We've got Thuray. Now, Thuray is more of a comic relief character. So that's quite common in teen shows, I think, in teen movies. We've got a character who's comic relief. He's very quiet. He's not as popular, but he comes from a very wealthy family. But that comic relief element of Thuray comes through the strongest. Then, of course, we have Rachel, who's the new girl, unpopular, and that's a very common theme in teen dramas as well. The new character, or the unpopular character, who sometimes has conflict against other characters who are more popular, even the most popular in the school. I'm not going to go into all the twists and turns in this book, because if I do, it will give the big parts away. I think this book is worth reading, even though it's not perfect and the characters are a bit cliche. It's still an okay book to read. I think the author was influenced by horror movies quite a lot, by Scream, and also by movies like I Know What You Did Last Summer and things like that. I think those movies played a big part in the author's development of this plot and the writing of the scenes. The end of this book was good enough, even though the twist towards the end that should have been a big twist, it was too obvious, so it wasn't a very shocking twist at all. I think the author was intending it to be bigger than it was at the end. The ending was still good enough, and I'm kind of hoping that there's a sequel to this book, because I think there could be. I think there's enough at the end to drive a sequel, and I'm wondering if that would happen. But I think there's a bit to explore in the main character and how the main character dealt with the end of this book, and with some of the other characters as well that made it to the end. I think there's enough there to explore how that affects their lives, maybe even a year into the future. Rachel, our main character. Now, I thought the author did a good job in creating this character. We see her anxiety. We feel everything about her. We feel her confusion, her fear. We feel how she reacts to external pressures a lot. We see how she reacts to different people around her. And I thought she was very believable, very consistent. So Rachel was probably the best character in this book, which is a good thing, because she's the main character and the story focuses around her. So she better be the best character, because if she's not, the book will suffer. And I thought the author did a good job in just showing her emotions and showing her growth as well as a character. Bram's written to be the good-looking popular guy who's a bit of a jerk most of the time, but can be nice if he needs to be. But he comes across as a bit one-dimensional, in my opinion, and a bit stereotypical, and I don't think there's enough roundness to his character to make him that engaging and that interesting. I think the author tried to make him a bit mysterious with the way he acted towards Rachel and other characters. He's a bit aloof sometimes, in his dialogue and his opinions, but I just don't think he's well crafted and well structured. I think he's there for a purpose, and that's to drive maybe the interest of the female teenage readers, but I don't think he's a very strong character at all in this book. Sandra, Rachel's best friend in the book, she's another stereotypical character in my opinion. You know, the character who's at the fringes, who wants to be popular, who'll do anything they can to be popular, who's always a bit jealous of people who are popular. She's the character that also is the gossip sponge. You know, she knows everything about everybody, or she thinks she does, and she just wants to find out everything about people. So I don't think she's the strongest character in the book. She is consistent in the way she acts in the book, but I don't think as a character she's well-rounded or well-crafted really. She's better than Bram as a character, but not a really strong character, not totally three-dimensional. I think there should be more to this character than there is, and I think the author could have done so much more with Sandra to make her more lifelike, more real. She's entertaining, and I think she is somewhat comic relief as well, but I think take that comic relief element away from her and she just goes into the background a bit, into the shadows. And that's a bit unfortunate because Sandra could have been such a more of a character in this book, played more of a role and more of a strong role because she's very important to Rachel in this book. While this isn't the best book I've read, and for a horror, it's kind of a teen horror, it's a bit of a soft horror, and in some elements it almost comes across as a comedy horror, you know, a dark comedy horror in some elements. I rate it a 3 out of 5. I did enjoy the read, even though the characters are not all well crafted, some are one-dimensional, some aren't consistent enough. There's enough there to enjoy the read, enough to keep your interest, and it's got enough uniqueness to make it an okay read. There is an element there that's very strongly copied from movies like Scream, too much so, in my opinion. It could have been a bit less on that aspect, but still okay as a read, and as a young adult horror, I think it does tick a lot of the boxes. I do review a lot of horror novels and young adult novels on my channel. If you don't want to miss out on those videos, check out my channel and subscribe. I also have a horror playlist on my channel. It should be on your screen now.